صدري قرآن.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين المكرمين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمهم الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to the dear brothers and sisters who are watching this rumination, inshaAllah. We ask Allah that all your ibadat, all your ta'at, and especially your fasts in this holy month are accepted. And inshaAllah, from this holy city of Qom, from the shrine of Bibi Masuma, we ask her as well to help us in fulfilling these wala'if and the responsibilities that we have. We begin our rumination, inshallah, carrying on from the last part of the dua. And the dua moves on, dua Abu Hamzah Fumali. And today, inshallah, I'd like to mention two parts of the dua, and if time allows, or if and Allah aids us, inshallah, explain somewhat these 2 points. So the Imam keeps on going, he keeps on mentioning reasons as to why he's being prevented, or whenever he's ready to come and pray or stand for salah or do munajat, there is something or an obstacle that comes, and he lists the reasons. And so yesterday we for example, we gave one reason being not being grateful enough, or not being shakir, or not doing shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even the shukr we mentioned requires another shukr as well. Today he says, لَعَلَّكَ فَقَدْتَنِي مِن مَجَالِسِ الْعُلَمَاءِ فَخَذَلْتَنِي. Perhaps you have not found me in the majalis and in the gatherings of the scholars, and thus you have let me down. And this is a very important point. How many of us or have in our schedules or have in our lives the presence of scholars or a scholar? And when I say the presence of scholars or a scholar, I don't mean just going to a majlis or just tuning into a majlis, even though it's very difficult in these times, for sure, in COVID. But for those of us who can, for example, visit scholars or have local ulama, being in their presence, benefiting from them. We have in the ahadith examples where the Imam says, or the Ahlul Bayt say, that an alim is like a tree. You wait for it, and eventually a fruit will drop. So just being in their presence, looking at the face of an alim is ibadah. It might come across as me saying that you should spend time with me, but no, I mean real ulama, real scholars. I'm pretty sure ulama in your local cities, there are local ulama who are worthy, who you should spend time with, inshallah. And just before I move to the second point as well, which might take much more of my time, I wanted to say this, that if you can, brothers and sisters, try to interact with the alim outside of just the regular interactions that you have with the so-called alim. Yes, he's there, he gives a speech, yes, he leads namaz, yes, these are all things that an alim is there for. But more so beyond that, try to interact on a personal basis, try to develop a relationship on a personal basis, try to form relationships outside of the masjid, try to form halaqat or circles with a scholar outside, try to have a book club, try to have certain sessions with the alim outside of just that setting, so that you can gain more, you can have a personal relationship with an alim and gain more from that. Most definitely, there's a lot of benefit in that for all of you, for all of us, even over here in Qum. And so that's one point. So the Imam sees that as a reason, if none of these points are good enough to think of as benefits, the idea that the Imam is saying, the fact that I don't associate it with ulama, or I don't sit in these gatherings of ulama, maybe that's the reason that that you sort of like create an obstacle for me, and I can't sort of pray to you or do munajat with you. The second point is this: لَعَلَّكَ رَأَيْتَنِي فِي الْغَافِلِينَ فَمِنْ رَحْمَتِكَ آيَسْتَ. Or perhaps you've seen me amongst the ghafilin, those who are inattentive, those who are negligent, and thus you have made me despair of your mercy. And this is a very important point, brothers and sisters, the idea of ghafla. And I want to say this, just to give a small example, and I'd like to spend time on this today. the entire idea or the entire journey of growth, one of the first steps in one actualizing that journey is called in the Arabic language, or according to certain scholars, yaqza, the awakening. And it requires one to awaken, right? What does awakening mean? Right? If you're asleep, what happens when you're asleep? You could be asleep on a train, you could be asleep on a plane. You don't know your surroundings. You're ghafil from your surroundings. You're unaware of the surroundings that you're in. You don't know what's going on. And so what happens when you awaken? These realities become clear to you. You pay attention to these realities now. You can understand what's going on around you. You are aware of your surroundings. There is this newfound, I would say, connection to reality even. That's what happens when you sort of awaken. And so similarly, just using that metaphor, which is very close to our situation, a lot of us are ghafil in our lives. And the Quran says this as well. For example, it says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْيَنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. They have hearts that they don't يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. They don't ponder with it, they don't see with it, they don't realize things with it, they don't intellectualize things with it. And by the heart they mean like the soul, right? Their souls are unable to understand reality. They have eyes but they cannot see. They have ears but they cannot hear. They're ghafil, they're negligent. So the Quran mentions this as well. What are they ghafil from? Well, one is only ghafil of things that are there. Right? I cannot be negligent of something that does not exist or that's not here right now. Right? I cannot be negligent of someone who's not here in this surrounding, in this physical area, for example. I can only be negligent of someone who's here right now. For example, the person behind the camera. May Allah bless him, inshallah. A good friend of ours. Now, why am I mentioning this point? The reason why I'm mentioning this point is this. This ayah was mentioned by Sayyid Ali Zaidi on the first day as well, and I'd like to look at it again. It says this: يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. They know just the outward aspect. They know the hayat al-dunya, the zahir of it, the apparent of it, the outward aspect of the life of this world. But they are oblivious of the akhirah. Hum anil akhirati hum ghafilun. They are oblivious, they're inattentive, they're ghafil from what? The hereafter. What's the point that Allama Tabatabai makes here? We mentioned it the first day as well. Allama Tabatabai says that the ayah says they're ghafil from the akhirah. That means that it's here, right now. The akhirah is present right now. It's not something that'll come later on. The reality of the akhirah is something that one can even reach here, if one pays attention, if one is able to do that. And so there's an interesting hadith that I would like to mention, and I'll just mention the hadith, and inshallah, when I finish the hadith, I'd like to end an ayah to sort of complete the idea. The hadith goes as such. There's a man who comes to the masjid at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's in the masjid, and the hadith describes him as such that he's musfarran, he's sort of, his color is yellow almost, and nahifa jismuhu, he's very thin, he's lost all his weight, wagharat aynahu fi ra'si, he sort of like has these eyes, you know, they're sort of trenched into his skull, like very sort of like thin, has not been sleeping, has not been eating a lot. فَقَالَ لَهُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ كَيْفَ أَصْبَحْتَ. How'd you wake up? How's your day? How, you know, it's Fajr namaz. How are you? What's your state? He says, أَصْبَحْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ مُوقِنًا. I woke up in the state of certainty. It's a very important point. It's Rasulullah that he's talking to. It's not some random guy. And look at the claim. I woke up with certainty, muqan, with yaqeen. It's the least distributed ni'mah that's there in a hadith. Yaqeen is the least distributed amongst people. It's very hard to gain. And he's telling Rasulullah that I have yaqeen. فَعَجِبَ Rasulullah. Rasulullah was like taken aback by this. And so he goes on and he basically says that, you know, what do you have yaqeen of? Obviously of certainty. What is this certainty related to? And so he says I realized that the reality of this dunya, and so I've sort of moved away from this, right? I'm not interested in food, I'm not interested in sleep. But I want to tell you this. I can see Ahl al-Jannah. كأني أنظر إلى أهل الجنة. I can see the people of Jannah. I know who they are. I can see them. Not only do I see them resting, reclining on those couches. I see them enjoying heaven. وكأني أنظر إلى أهل النار. I can see the people of hellfire. وهم فيها معذبون. And I can see them being punished right now. They're screaming. They're being punished. And he explains to Rasulullah what he sees, right? Like them standing, that going into heaven, them enjoying heaven, them going to hellfire, them sort of being punished in the hellfire. And Rasulullah, when he hears this, right, the hadith doesn't end. According to one of the hadiths, that Rasulullah says, Ahsan, make sure that you don't jeopardize this state, as one of our friends would call it. Don't put this state, right? Don't, make sure you safeguard this situation that you're in. And if Rasulullah felt that this was something that wasn't real, he would have told him that, hey, you need to take care of yourself. But why is he saying this? The reason why he's saying this is the ayah in the Quran, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا عِندَنَا خَزَائِنُهُ وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدْرٍ مَعْلُومٍ. There is nothing, but the treasures and the reality of it are with us. وَمَا نُنَزِّلُهُ إِلَّا بِقَدْرٍ مَعْلُومٍ. We've only revealed a little bit in this dunya. This zahiri dunya, this life of this world, we're interacting with the most lowest aspect of creation. And because we're used to that lowest aspect of creation, we deal with these things, we deal with the lower aspects, we interact with them on a lower aspect, and we believe the existence and reality to be limited by that. But if one is able to break outside of this, if one is able to break their ghafla, if one is able to connect with the reality, right? Awakening. How do you get out of ghafla? Awaken. That's why the first step being yaqza. How do you reach yaqza? When you feel the need. The greater the need, the greater the awakening. So when you have this awakening, what happens? You break out of this ghafla. And when you break out of this ghafla, you see things that you haven't seen before. And it depends on what you're seeing. You see things, if you go to a deeper level, right? Realities of people. And if you reach the stage, for example, no one can reach that stage. What you see what Imam Ali says, there's nothing that I saw what? رَأَيْتُ اللَّهَ قَبْلَهُ وَمَعَهُ وَبَعْدَهُ. I saw Allah before it, with it, after it. That point, that level is available. Being able to reach that point. And inshallah, I'll end with this hadith, just to give you the idea that, you know, there were people like us at the time of Rasulullah as well. They say that these very nice people, very sincere people, you know, inshallah we're amongst them as well. These sincere people would go to Rasulullah and they would say, Ya Rasulullah, sometimes when we come visit you, you know, like, we have this elated feeling within us. We feel so happy. We're willing to do anything. You know, we're willing to be shaheed. We're willing to do everything that's necessary. We're ready to go to Jannah, whatever you require of us. But as soon as we go home, and the terminology is very poetic, he says, we smell our children, we smell our families, and that hala or that state goes away from us. So, and look at this question. This shows the sincerity. Ya Rasulullah, are we munafiqs for having these two states? Is it the case that when we're with you we're one way and when we go home we're another? And Rasulullah was like, no, you're good. But know this, that if you're able to maintain this state that you had with me when you leave here, the malaika would yearn to shake your hands. They would speak to you. They would speak to you. And so it's very much possible for us to reach higher levels, right? Not higher levels to see these things, but higher levels to interact with Allah, to attain His qurbah. Remember, qurbatan ilallah. It's possible for us. But only if we're willing to sort of break through this ghafla. So this dua, this part of this dua where he's saying that maybe I'm unable to do munajat because I'm not thankful, so be thankful. Maybe I'm not able to be close to you because I don't sit with the ulama, sitting with the ulama. Maybe I'm not able to be close with you because I'm amongst the kadhibeen, the liars, not lying. Maybe I'm unable to stand up for Salatul Layl because I'm ghafil, right? Breaking that ghafla. And so one practical advice for all of them, and I know today, you know, taking more time, inshallah, you know, it's the month of Ramadan, sadaqah and charity is like mustahab, so the charity that you'll give, these extra minutes, and inshallah the people behind the camera as well, is this. Brothers and sisters, if you can, right, if you're the type, and I would highly recommend this, write it out. If you can, write it out. A lot of people do muhasabah, right? They account for what they've done throughout the day. They're able to do it between Maghrib and Isha Salat, or before Fajr Salat, or after Fajr Salat, or before they go to sleep. Some people do that. They're cognitively strong and they're able to think of these things. But there are some who are unable to sort of just think about these things, right? They get tired or they forget. For them, I'd recommend this. Please write it down. Write it down. And what happens, even from a psychological perspective, is this. When you write down your thoughts, it's within human nature to give it order, to assign cause and effect. And so things start making sense when you write them out. You become a better thinker, and you realize more things when you write them down. So if you can, practical advice, write things down. Write how your day was. Write what was good with it, write what was bad with it. Write when you were an abd of Allah and a servant of Allah, and when you weren't. And inshallah, it'll sort of like help your nafs and help your soul to pull you back the next day when you're falling into the same track. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we're not from the ghafileen. And inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He always bless us with scholars and we are able to benefit from them. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.